Is this working? Am I losing frames again? 18% lost frames. The mission is buffered. Hello, hello, am I back again? Hello, hello, is this working? Hello, hello. Drops frames again. Is this working? Is this working? Hello, hello. It feels okay. I'm getting more frames now. Is it working? Is it working? Okay, it feels like it's working now. Yay! Okay, so classic day in the week. Last stream was on May, no, that's today, April 27th. So let's go to April 28th, which is my friend's birthday, by the way. April 28th, which was Tuesday. So I streamed on Monday. Monday I just went to buy things, and then I think in the afternoon I streamed. Then Tuesday I had a shift with a trainer that was pretty nice. He was called Tobias, I think, and he was pretty chill. He let me drive. He outside the stand, but yeah, with this 24 Baureihe. But it was cool. He was like nice about it and had like a pretty good mood and all this, and like a good vibe and like a helpful vibe and all this. So that was nice. Then the next day and the next 2 or 3 days, I had a different trainer, and I knew already that it was going to be a bad vibe because he didn't reply to my messages. And when someone doesn't reply to your messages, you know they're like going to be fucking annoying because they have like some preconception of like who has to message when, and if you don't do it at that time, they simply ghost you, which is like annoying as fuck. I tried to mitigate it by being nice or whatever, but yeah, I already knew from the very first moment that it was going to be fucking annoying. And yeah, it was like that. Then that first day I had like the same shift as the day before, so a little bit of 20, and then the new train a little bit as well. Pretty short shift, well, not short, but like pretty light shift with just like with 2 or 3, with like 4 drives with like a decent gap between each other. I'm on 4G, by the way, so that's why in this on 5G, so that's why the connection is shit now. Instead of my normal Wi-Fi, it's because I'm using my private Wi-Fi. Then the next day was the same time with this other guy, and yeah, that's pretty annoying. And I have very few pictures because with this guy, I don't know, I didn't feel like comfortable taking the phone out and like taking pictures. Plus, it is also true that we had like shifts that were pretty also with very few like gap between each other, so I couldn't take like a picture right after. We were like not in a rush, but there was not a lot of downtime, and in the downtime I didn't feel comfortable with him taking like a picture or whatever because I was sure that he would say some dumb shit. Then the next day I also had with him, but the good thing is that he let me out a little bit earlier. Also, I mean, makes sense because I'm alone. But But yeah, it's what I did. So also, it's good that at least he let me out and wasn't like being annoying. I mean, also when people are annoying, they usually let you out earlier because like they're annoyed with people or whatever. They hate people, something like this. He also said it himself. I don't like people. That's why he drives nights. Blah blah blah. I don't know why he would become a trainer, but yeah. That day I also had McDonald's, the purple menu, which was interesting. This purple shake was pretty good, not gonna lie. I mean, nothing mega special, I guess. It's just like blueberry flavor or something like this, but it was good. The purple burger was cool because the sauce on the cheese was like purple, which was, I don't know, funny. And the purple sauce was a little bit different than the sour cream sauce. It had like its own touch. This purple dessert was better than like apple pie, in my opinion. Like apple pie, when I've had it, I didn't like it that much. And in this case, I preferred it to the apple pie. And yeah, that's then yesterday, Saturday, I first did some errands while I lent my washing machine to a classmate slash friend slash well, not flatmate, but like neighbor. And yeah, that was that. Then yeah, meanwhile I was cooking food, so yeah, at least it was not like a huge, you could say, waste of time, or like it didn't like interrupt my schedules a lot. Mainly, I guess, washing machine, but I also wasn't planning to wash my clothes that day, I guess. Maybe if I had it free, I would have taken advantage, but I don't really think so. So it wasn't like a huge deal. And we talked a little bit, and yeah, I guess like update each other on like what's going on, and it's always cool to hang out a little bit. Then I called my mom. Well, on the way, something to say is that this week has been like great weather. Today it's getting a little bit worse, you could say, okay, cloudier, but it's still warm, and yeah, that's nice. Therefore, like even though I had like a annoying trainer or whatever, at least there were like some highlights, like driving through, nice, also nice, it being a nice day and like being driving. Sometimes you think like, oh, I wish I could be enjoying the weather or something, but I also it's like cool to drive a train in like nice weather. You see like the sights, you see everything, you I don't know, the light is beautiful and you see all the landscapes and all that. So I like it, and I'm not thinking, for example, he was thinking like, the bad part of like working on a weekend is that you see everyone enjoying themselves. So, for example, on Friday, I guess he could smell people like grilling, and he was like, I'm so envious. I wish I could be grilling right now instead of here or something. But I don't know. I didn't have that mindset. I wasn't thinking in those terms. I was thinking like, oh, that's cool. I mean, it's cool that people are enjoying themselves. The vibe is also fun because like the people are like, I don't know, they are kind of like smiling, more smiling. It's like more smiley than something that on a normal day where like people are kind of like commuting or whatever. So it's not like as fun. There are no groups or something, or like families or something like this. Like the job is a little bit, you could say, a little bit more annoying because you have to wait until large groups go out of the train and into the train. But that aside, it's like nice to have to be part of that vibe and to be able to. It's like to bring transport to people in when they're having fun. I find that's cool. I don't know. For example, choosing. transit for work is cool or whatever, but choosing transit for fun, I feel like it's nice. We didn't have the Sternberg line. If we had that one, it would probably be low-key crazy. We had the Herbstring line, but it was like a little bit later. So I don't think we had that many people because of that, but it still was pretty full, we could say. And yeah, that was yesterday. And then afterwards, I went to the club to Prosecco. And yeah, I had like a lot of, I don't know, I have like not a lot of, but I have like some tiny anecdotes or something that I thought it was fun. Maybe I could. I mean, I can't upload any now. Right now, that's the problem because sadly, yeah, because I'm using data, so I can't sync it. But yeah, basically some anecdotes. Well, I went with a friend, with a Discord friend that we don't talk often, but the times we've talked or whatever, it's always been like about topics that I don't tend to disclose that openly with people. For example, with the classmates here, I don't talk about that much. Or even on YouTube, there are topics that maybe sometimes I touch on in like the middle of some stream or like in the middle of some video, but it's not topics that I tend to cover a lot. And with him, I talk about those things because yeah, we know us from some online forum, like more or less dedicated to those kind of things, you could say. And yeah, that's why I would define him as a little bit weird, but I'm kind of used to having weird friends, you could say. So, and I'm getting more used to that. I wanted to cover that as a topic also for today later. But yeah, I went out with him and I was in the club. We went there. We had some Vietnamese first, uh, per my suggestion, because I was feeling like a little bit of, I don't know, weird in the stomach. Today I'm also feeling a little bit weird in the stomach, to be honest. But today I have dinner like already kind of made, so that's what I'm going to have. And yeah, I'm going to have to wake up at like 5 a.m. So I should be going to bed at like 9 or something. Not sure how if that will happen. Maybe I go at 11 and sleep 6 hours. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, but it was a fine night basically. Back to the topic, but back to Prosecco or whatever. It was a fun time. I like that club. It's a gay club, by the way. But it's like I don't know the vibe and so on. It's the music that they have and all that is conducive to me kind of like letting out and like being able to actually let out versus like the normal club environment with, for example, when I went with friends that were like girl friends or something like this, when we went to like more normal clubs. And there I feel, for example, like the dynamics are a little bit more, I don't know, like more set in stone, and like where, I don't know, openness or whatever is like a little bit less well regarded, and like the objectives are kind of strange and so on. Meanwhile, this kind of like more queer or whatever club is like pretty cool in that sense that, I don't know, the vibe is a little bit more open. Yeah, people are like weird, or people can be weird, and so on. But sometimes it's like that makes your own weirdness a little bit less, uh, yeah, kind of like less relevant, or like you are less like self-conscious and so on. So yeah, I could like dance my heart out a little bit on some songs, let some energy out because I'm pretty closed off in general. So it's nice to have like a chance to let out and to be like a little bit uninhibited and like to drink a little bit. I mean, I don't like the drinking aspect, and I had 3 beers yesterday, 3 Weissbier, a Dunkel while eating, and then 2 more in the club. But yeah, I do, which I don't like in health terms because it's kind of like too much, too much fat. It builds up. It's basically calories that are trash and that are basically not really nutritional or anything like this, right? But I guess it is the price to pay for a little bit of like an inhibition, which I definitely do need because I don't think that I can do that sober. Well, I mean, I think I could, but it takes more to warm up, and it's like still it would be like a little bit more toned down probably. Meanwhile, with that, it's like the darkness, the music, the yeah, being a little bit uninhibited. It does help a little bit to feel a little bit more free or like freer or something like this, which is nice. Then the anecdotes that I had, and then it was interesting because it also feels like being in the real world, is strange because I notice, and it is a gay club, so basically everyone is a man. Not everyone, but there are like a lot of men compared to, well, I guess compared to our normal club or like a straight club or something, the ratio is not even that different, not gonna lie. But but I guess the vibe is a little bit different. It's like in a gay club, the vibe is also kind of like more men centered than in a normal club or a straight club where it's like very much girl centric. And also the men express themselves a little bit more femininely in like gay clubs. So that's, I don't know, it's a little bit different. The vibe is a little bit different. So in that sense, I felt, yeah, it was interesting to like navigate that, I guess, to be able to feel, to be able to like let out or something in a way where maybe in a normal club you can't because you feel like you're more like, if you don't fit a certain role, you will like stand out way too much. Meanwhile, here I felt like maybe I stood out a little bit, but at certain moments, and like overall, I wasn't like the main character or anything like this, right? Only like early on when people weren't dancing as much or something. I don't know. Then some people that we met like a guy who was, he said he was like from Canada, but well, from Germany, but also who had like Canadian family, and I think he said Angolan, but I'm not exactly sure if that is something I heard correctly. But yeah, he was like a black guy, kind of big, but yeah, as I said, from Germany, which was interesting. Like, so it was like an interesting mix. He was like, I assume he said his mom was German, so he basically was I'm not sure he mentioned if he was raised here or something. He mentioned that he knew the languages like Spanish. He knew English, German, French. He was like a nice guy. We didn't talk a lot, I guess, but I mean in the vibe, right? The vibe in the club or whatever. He was like pretty funny, and he had like funny moves, and like also, yeah, he did to the old songs. He was like a little bit older than us, I guess 32, he said, and he looked younger, you could say. And yeah, then at some point there was also like some random other guy who was like slimmer, a leaner build, but he had like a lot of hair, a lot of chest hair, and like not sure if leg hair, but like arm hair and all this. But he was wearing like kind of you could say kind of revealing clothes. I would say like a low, not low cut, yeah, I guess like a low cut, something like this, red top with a little with kind of a belt that's like Shakira style. You know what I mean? With this kind of like belly dance type vibe, and like some pants that were like pretty flattering, I guess, to his figure or something. And I don't know. It was like I was noticing those things, for example. Just in, oh, before, by the way, in the Vietnamese restaurant, we did talk a little bit about relationships and those kind of things, and like how I'm kind of closed off to things and so on. So after that conversation, for example, seeing these people live or whatever, that I don't know, one could say that I could find things attractive about them or something. But in the back of my mind was always like the fact, I don't know, kind of the elephant in the room or whatever you could say. So yeah, but yeah, with him I barely interacted or something like this, and I don't know, I don't understand exactly like these club vibes, and I can't read people well, so I don't know if he was interested. I don't think so, and I think like in that case my read of like him not being interested was correct. But because people move from one place to another, and in the way we're moving from one place to another, they get closer to you. It's like it can lead to different expectations, you could say, or like maybe I don't know, different different impressions. You can, for example, maybe think that he's getting closer to you when actually he's not getting closer to you specifically, and it's more like going out to a different side, something like that. Because like people move dancing, so I don't know. I guess I'm also different in that environment. You could say I'm more when I'm like more uninhibited or whatever. Maybe it's cringe or something, probably, but I don't know. It is what it is, and it was a different vibe. It kind of like makes me go like woo or some things like this, right? When the vibe is when someone hits like a nice move, or when someone's like being out there or something and giving it all, and yeah, then at some point someone else like a friend from this black guy who I didn't get the name by the way. So I don't know. I'm kind of like mad that I'm calling him the black guy, like I don't know, some kind of token figure or something, or some kind of token anecdote. But it wasn't the like I don't know. That's not my intention or something like this. It's more like I don't have his name. Like I forgot to ask. Same with the other guy. We actually like more formally introduced ourselves because with this guy we just in the club or something. We kind of like were interacting or whatever. But then afterwards I didn't catch his name or anything. So and yeah, then this other guy came out and he was like pretty feminine, you could say. And I wasn't sure, for example, at first whether he was like a trans woman or like a guy. But yeah, he looked like very put together very feminine, very. I liked his vibe a lot, and he was like attractive also. And I did notice it at the beginning, but then afterwards I did tell him that he looked like Anne Hathaway, which he actually did pretty look quite a lot like Anne Hathaway in my opinion, which was kind of like uncanny, just without the hair. Like imagine Anne Hathaway with like a pixie cut or something like that. It's pretty like kind of like maybe like a little bit more masculine than with a little bit more masculine features or something like this. That was like pretty much how he looked. And yeah, then it turned out that he had like a really nice vibe as well, right? He was like friends with this with the black guy, and I'm going to say the Canadian guy or something because I don't. It's not that I hate race or something, and it is like literally effective, but it's like I'm going to call him the Canadian guy from now on because even though he's German, he has like that Canadian connection. And actually, I mean, I don't know if that's better because it's actually more inaccurate to call him Canadian when he's not 100% Canadian. Like he's half Canadian, half German. But he did have the Canadian passport. I think if I recall correctly, so I think it works. But anyways, he said he knew him. I was like they apparently it wasn't like anything planned. They simply encountered each other because we were at like a pretty noticeable place in the club. We were like at some kind of like a little bit elevated stage, you could say. So I guess we were kind of visible to see people who came in or something. If they turned up to like check out the dive or something, they maybe. And he saw him, and they started talking or whatever. And yeah, at first I kind of like kept. I mean, obviously I did notice, but I wasn't like super interactive. But like, because he was like with him, and it's like eventually in this club environment inside, I kind of like and you kind of like dance together a little bit or something like this, right? Not like literally together, but something like you kind of like make a little bit of I don't know, a kind of acknowledgement that the other person exists and is like kind of not part of the group or whatever, but like around, you know. And for example, it was very hot inside the club, so we had like this fan or like I was using this kind of restaurant menu to like drinks menu to fan myself. And so I was kind of fanning people when they were hot. And when I, for example, the Canadian guy was like very obviously he was also bigger a little bit, so I think he started to sweat easier. But it also was like very visible that his face was like sweaty. So when I noticed, for example, I started to like fan him or whatever, or with the guy that I came with, same, right? And then there was like a couple of those moments when I started fanning him, right? For example, the other guy. And then then we were alone for a while because they left outside, and then we went outside. And when we went outside at about 2:30 or something, then we started talking a little bit more, right? We approached kind of like the Canadian guy to talk a little bit, to say, hey, hi, you're here or something. And then we were talking a little bit, and then the other guy came. For some reason, I don't know where he was or something, but he came in, and we kind of like started talking a little bit more. We kind of got kicked out of that place where people are smoking and went a little bit more aside, and we started talking a little bit more, just like introducing ourselves basically. But like the way he introduced himself and something like this, and like the way he accepted, I told him the compliment, right? And the way he accepted it was like pretty nice. And he said he was going today to watch this movie, this Devil Wears Prada 2 or something. He was like, I'm in it or something. Yeah, so he was like playful about it. So yeah, I don't know. So that was like kind of like a little anecdote that I had, or a couple of two little anecdotes, seeing kind of like, I don't know, people that I wouldn't have, for example, in the past or in another era of mine or something, I wouldn't have necessarily not sure if not being attracted to or like not accepted my attraction or something. It's difficult. It's difficult. And for example, I wouldn't necessarily call it attraction right now, right? It's more like spark. I don't know, not spark either. It's like noticing. This kind of like noticing, this kind of like type of noticing. Because for example, there were also like a couple of girls in the club, and I was also kind of like noticing. But it's also difficult to to say that that is attraction, because it's not. I don't feel it. I don't feel like a super raw bodily attraction. It's more like a noticing. I think. I don't know, because I don't know people and I don't know how people work or anything like this. I don't know how others work, and I don't know how others experience attraction in environments like this. And for example, because for example, I also see like dudes kissing, right? There were like a fuck ton of dudes kissing. So I'm assuming, for example, that for them the attraction must be like, I don't know, a little more, very much stronger or something like this. So yeah, that always introduces like this kind of like layer of doubt in my brain with either gender or whatever, or like everything in the middle as well. The music was cool, by the way. The music in that place is always nice for me. I always like pop and so on. It had also like some mix of like a little bit of reggaeton. Some songs weren't like reggaeton. It felt like they were like de-reggaetonified and they were popified, and then they switched to Bad Bunny songs, and the Bad Bunny songs were actually like left more or less reggaeton. And then they had like old reggaeton bangers like Gasolina and so on. But my music I flow. By the way, this week I have like some lip herpes. I don't know exactly why, but I do have it. And yeah, that's basically it, I guess. For the anecdotes, and today I did laundry for my bed sheets. I not even cooked. I cut a cucumber and had it with hummus, and that was my lunch today. I wasn't like having a very big stomach or like being super hungry. I'm not even hungry right now, so and it's already 8 p.m. So I should probably get finishing the stream and this. Okay, I had the topics that I had were like just related to this. I had two topics. One of them was like this, my evolving relationship that I wanted to, I guess, make a more explicit video about. And it was kind of like my evolving relationship with having weird friends. And I guess basically the gist of it is that I've had normal friends. Well, I have some like pre-reflections, then some reflections or something like this, right? It's like pre-reflections. It's like being normal versus weird is a frame thing. So it's like even normal people have their weirdnesses, right? And maybe they have been weird in parts of their lives, or like in other contexts, or whatever, right? Sorry, I look at myself in the, I don't know, I have like two things, but I look at myself in not the live. When I'm live, I don't know, it's different to look at myself live than to look at myself like 10 seconds ago, because then I can, I don't know, I can see like it's like a whole different experience. I can't explain why, but I'm trying to see if I can show this. I don't know. This, for example, you can see myself here. I mean, now it's different, but if I do this, I mean, it's difficult to say because I have to first put the normal one, then put the TV one. And like now, I'm looking at myself here, and I can see myself in the top monitor here, and then I can see myself in the scene above. But not really, because now it's a little bit delayed. But by the time I switch, maybe this will have switched. And I can see myself. Now I can see, for example, myself 10 seconds ago. So it's different to see myself now talking to the camera or whatever and doing a little bit of this than looking at myself 10 seconds ago doing the same thing. Now you can see there that I'm seeing myself on the TV, on the OBS, and I'm seeing myself above, and I'm seeing like a whole different thing. Now I'm moving my hands like this. I'm above. I'm like just touching my nose, right? So it's like a whole different thing. It's weird to experience. And when it's like full screen and I'm not showing it, it's like more, especially when I'm like I have sat still for a little bit, or like when I see, for example, this angle of my hair that I don't usually see when I'm looking at myself talking, and I can't look at myself. Right? I can only see this side of my hair. Right now I can see it because I could look up a little bit, but then it covers it. So it's like different, right? Well, now I can see it, which I don't like. But yeah, those kind of little things, you know. And I don't know. I don't know where I left it. But yeah, basically I had like these pre-reflections, then the main reflection is that I have, I guess you could say, like I could put like some relationship like more details, right? More, I don't know, a timeline of like the relationships I had, or like the friend groups that I had, and then and my belonging, right? And how I felt in relation, and then how I feel now, you could say, right? So yeah, I could start recording something. I don't know if I talk louder than the exhausts from those cars or whatever. I think that might be close. My evolving relationship with having weird friends. Some pre-reflections on before this. Well, first I'm going to my evolving relationship with having weird friends. So this video is structured like pretty roughly in some pre-reflections, then kind of the main reflection, then kind of a timeline of how my friendships evolved, you could say, or like the groups of friendships that I had and how I felt in these groups regarding to this weirdness concept. Then more or less to how I feel now, and yeah, which is tied more or less to the main reflection. And I guess you could say it's like a conclusive argument or something. Not argument, a conclusive thought. So yeah, for deep reflections. But yeah, it's all by the way. My evolving relationship with having weird friends. So I'm going to structure this video. It's pretty off the cuff, but I do have like some points that I want to hit, and these are like some pre-reflections before the topic or like some context or something like this. Then the main reflection, then the timeline of like the friendships that I've had over the years or the groups of friends that I've had over the years and how I felt in relation to this concept of weirdness, you could say, and or how I see the groups, not just how I felt, but how I see the groups. And then a little bit of how I feel now, which is tied to kind of the main reflection and it's kind of like the more conclusive argument, you could say. And yeah, even though it has like this structure, it will be pretty off the cuff also. I have like some points written up, but it's mostly going to be like out loud reflection, sorry, out loud live reflection. So then the pre-reflections, I guess, not context necessarily, but like some kind of like setting the basis of like what does weird friends mean or something like this, right? And as a pre-reflection or something like this, or like a food for thought for this concept is basically that being normal versus weird is kind of like a frame thing, right? It depends on how you frame things that people can seem normal or can seem weird. And also something to touch on is that even the people that I will consider as normal or something, everyone has like their weirdnesses. They have their little quirks, there's things that can make them in their own picture feel misunderstood or something. But I guess I'm talking kind of more about, you could say a little bit more, so as an individual, every single individual of every group has their own things. And now looking back or now in the present, at their evolution, I can see, I don't know, weird things about them as well, right? But I'm talking more or less about this kind of how I saw the groups in itself and like in relation to other groups in a broader, for example, if I'm talking about school friends, about this particular smaller group in the context of our class and not just the class itself, but maybe like the group of our year or something like this, right? So yeah, that's basically how I'm thinking about this. Those are like the pre-reflections about what I mean about being weird friends. It's like kind of being the weird group or being kind of like more isolated to the other groups among each other. You know what I mean? That's kind of like being the weird group because maybe there are other groups that have their own quirks or that are not necessarily the most popular groups or whatever, but they're less weird in the sense that they, when it comes out to having everyone together, the associations between each subgroup defines more or less like a status hierarchy or something like this, you know? or less, maybe not super hierarchical, but in the end, yeah, hierarchical. Basically, you can tell, okay, these are the coolest groups, these are the second coolest groups, and this is the least cool group, basically. And my main reflection is kind of like my evolving relationship with having weird friends is that I think it used to affect me a lot more to feel this kind of like in a weird group, or to feel that I am part of the weird group. It used to make me feel bad. So I would have like more tendencies towards wanting to suppress that, towards wanting to belong more to the overall or whatever, to like increase status, you could say. I used to have that pull. I mean, I'm not sure if I ever acted super in that line, but I did have that feeling, and I did act in small ways. For example, like, I don't know, being mad at certain weird things that people did from my group or things like that. Or like not maybe not being directly mad at them or doing them, but for example having a certain sense of like that this is a sense in which I'm being dragged down when I could actually be higher status or something like that. I kind of more or less something like this. And now I would say that I feel less like that, and that I feel, I guess, more, I don't know, accepting of people's weirdnesses within my groups. And I'm like, okay, if these weirdnesses have led to me being, I don't know, like kind of like less connected to those other groups, or like to have lower status within the wider, for example, let's say year in my talking about high school or college, talking about whatever, right? Then it's like, it's what it is, what it is, you know. Then a little bit of the recap of like this timeline, or like how I felt in relation to this, and how I more than how I felt personally, how I feel that the groups were, you know, because maybe I have been I think I would say that I have been part of groups that I consider normal, right? Or like the, not sure if high status, but like normal status rather than lower status. I think here weird is always kind of like lower status. Basically, you are excluded from, versus normal is like either not being actively excluded or like being actively included will probably be something like being something like cooler, versus being actively excluded is like uncool, and being like neither excluded or included, rather like when it comes to it, there are no problems in inclusion, and when it doesn't come to it, there are like no inclusion or exclusion dynamics going on or something like this. That would be kind of like normal, or like the base state or something like that. And yeah, I guess for my timeline, when I was really small, you could say, so in school, Grundschule, as we say in Germany now, and el colegio, as we say in Spanish, and middle school, as they call it in the USA, you could say, that period of time for me, I would say I was like part of the normal group, right? You know, it was, I guess, less insular, and it was like a bigger, more all-encompassing group, where there were like less people left out, which was worse, I guess, if you were one of the people who were left out, because it meant that it was like basically, rather than being like, as I will say, in high school, where there are like more clusters, it was like a big cluster versus like a smaller, actually like excluded cluster or something. I was part of the normal cluster, but I wasn't like actively excluded or anything like this. And then I guess that means that I was probably like the weird person in the normal cluster. Probably means that. But I think when you're a kid, everyone is kind of like a little bit weird in a way, because people are all kids or something. But so I didn't feel particularly weird in any case. I did feel weird in some situations. For example, I did feel like I was like more sensitive. Okay, I cried more easily than many others, or yeah, that I could get upset quicker than other people. That people could get to me quicker than I could get to them. For example, if it were to be to get to that point or something. But yeah, I would say that I consider myself within this normal group. And for example, when I look now at people from that time, in my mind, because also because we went to high school with many of them together, and they retained the normal status while I, you could say, got dropped down and got to hang out with people who were weirder. That means that I guess I can see kind of like I can trace the normalcy curve or something. Then in high school, at the beginning of high school, first and second year, I was part, I would say, of another normal group. I wouldn't know and how high status it was to be part of this group. And I don't recall exactly whether we were all on the same class or we were in different classes. It doesn't come to mind right now. I would lean to say that we were more or less in the same class, or like for some reason I had ended up in their class. I was neighbors with one of them and so on. So we hung out a lot more. And I would classify this group as like higher status, like less weird people who are not weird by default, people who are like normal. And that period of time, for example, I did care about these things, and I did care about fitting in a certain way, and I probably acted in a way that reflected that in other instances of my life, for example, with my brother or with my parents maybe, or on social media or something like that. Because social media was kind of like beginning to be a thing. Then, third year and fourth year of high school and bachillerato, which is like 5th year and 6th year of high school, or like, I don't know, grade whatever, right? I don't know. But before university, basically, 2 years before university, in those later 4 years of high school, I was weird. My friends were like, one of them who came new to class was kind of like a little bit weird. He wasn't weird by himself or something like this, but he was like from 1 year above, but he had like a small build, you know. He's like smaller. He's like a little bit less, not really that he's short, because he's more or less as tall as everyone else, but he's like really thin because he has like a condition or something. So, and he can't build like a lot of muscle. So he's like really thin, and you can tell that he has always also, particularly then when people are starting to grow a lot and all this, he always remained kind of like pretty small. And then some other friends who were like more weirder, kind of like on the autistic side or something like this. And then some friends that I had from back then or something, but that for some reason we became closer in that time as a group, right? You know, things that happen. But the resulting group from that point on, I would say that it's weird. And in that sense, I did know it, and I did point to some people, because, for example, my friend was like thinner or whatever. That's kind of like a weird thing in itself, but the attitude or whatever is like perfectly overcomable, and he was like pretty charismatic and so on, so he was like not weird by himself. But there were like a couple of two or three other people who their attitudes were like weird, right? Who were like, I don't know, acting autistic or those kind of things, right? And those things did bother me in that time, right? In that time, especially for example, when we were like in class, I guess I got used to it eventually. But outside, it felt to me like looking bad, right? It's like optically looking bad in general, right? In the world, being in the world, and you look bad. It's like you look weird, actively weird, and in association, because some people is like acting really weird, right? You know? And that did bother me, and I did get angry at this friend because of that pretty often, because he was like really weird. So it's like, I'm not sure if every week, but every time there would be like some weird anecdote that now I look back on it and I find it hilarious, or like I can laugh at it. And he also, it's like, to his credit, he did, like, when he when I cared and tried to do some things or to change things, he did at least try to, I don't know, be less weird or something like this, right? Probably also because he talked to his parents or something, right, about a lot, and his parents also pressured him a lot to be like less weird and all this, but also because he doesn't give a fuck, right? in a certain sense, because he doesn't really give a lot of fucks. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. Then this group of friends, by the way, has been my friend group and still is to this day, right? With, you could say, not many additions or losses. Uh, it's just that we see each other way less, and you could kind of say that right now there is being some losses, or maybe I am like less part of that in the day to day, and like one other friend is also less part of that in the day to day, blah blah blah, right? And like we hang out each other way less, and like one of them we really like see once in a blue moon, and he doesn't even engage online, etc. Right? So it doesn't keep super together. One of them in particular, but the other five we kind of like talk more or less regularly. So in that sense, yeah. Then, for context, that this group is still my current group, to mean that all of the groups that I'm going to mention from this point onwards, some of them I have not retained with connection with them as groups. Actually, with neither of them I have retained connection as groups until now, like this today. Some of those connections were retained a little bit more in time, past university, for example, or past whatever, but yeah. So that is like one group there. Then, in university, the group that I had, I would say, it's difficult to say. I would say that it was not the coolest group. It wasn't like the center of anything. And I would say that it was probably maybe a little bit of an outcast group, but also something about the vibe felt pretty normal, you know? It's like how the group interacted with the other groups, even though like this exclusion-inclusion thing, the exclusion dynamics, they didn't feel like super there. So it felt more kind of like insularity. And it felt like there were like weirder groups there where these inclusion dynamics, exclusion dynamics were like also part of it. And it was also not like we were like included while others were excluded. It was like more random, right? It was more or less like the cool people or whatever did their cool things, and sometimes you got to hang out a little bit or things like this. But yeah, and then there was like a whole another thing where we went into the afternoon group. Like some people went into the afternoon group, and that group was like pretty big, way bigger and way more cohesive and way more inclusive. And in that group, I never felt a part of, but I was there with a couple of them, like hanging out or something. But yeah, basically how I felt about that group, yeah, I felt like it was pretty normal. And in that sense, I don't know, it's nice to it's nice to like feel like you can go do stuff and it's like normal and that you're being like a normal person. I don't know, it feels nice in that sense. So I would say that it felt good to feel part of a group that is normal and that is you can do like normal activities and hang out in a normal way, and it's like kind of seamless. That's really pretty dope, you could say. Like go on trips and then do activities in the trips that are pretty normal, or like go out, for example, go out clubbing or something like this, which we didn't do often. But I don't know. The thing is that I don't know, or like go or make a barbecue or something. But yeah, it felt like it got. I did in that case. The problem was that I felt in relation to that group as the weirdest person. Then is when I start to feel like I'm the weirdest. Also, I was like way closer to one person of that group than to the others. So yeah, eventually, and the others were like way closer between each other than with us, for example. So while the person I was close with, he was closer, I never got that closeness. Then the next kind of group dynamics or something was in Erasmus, and in Erasmus I felt like we had not super cohesive group, and it was like a bit more fragmented or something. But it felt nice also, and I will also categorize it as normal. it was different because it was like it got fragmented, and like everyone had its quirks, and we were from different backgrounds, we had different priorities, etc., etc., etc. But yeah, but it was nice, you could say. And it's nice also, and for example, they were like, then it got I guess the core elements that got afterwards were like me, and those were the people with whom I kept the most relation, were like me and two or like three other girls, and they were like, I don't know, hanging out with them was like a different experience. It was like a different I would also categorize it as normal. And I also had this sense of like feeling the weird person out of the normal group, which was always like, I don't know, it's always a problem for me. It always feels strange, and it always makes me feel left out in like a, I guess, in an existential level. It makes me feel left out. So that part was bad, but when I felt like I was being included on something like this, and when things were going good, it felt cool. Like it felt nice. So it felt good to be able to be a part of a group like that, and to engage in activities like this, and to see like perspectives and dynamics and so on that are, I guess, more out of my more out of my range when I'm hanging out with my weird people, with my weird friends that are like kind of weird in that sense and don't like these kind of like normal activities or something like this, right? Or like don't feel particularly pulled to them. So it's not. I also don't feel like that particular pull, and I wouldn't drag my friends into doing these things. But when they are voluntarily wanting to do it, I kind of like join with enthusiasm and I have fun and so on. Also, so it's different, you know. So it's nice to experience, like for example, this more going out type vibe that these girls liked so much, and traveling for the sake of traveling and visiting new things that they also liked so much, and yeah, those things were pretty nice. And then right now, the friend groups that I had there, and then the friend group that I have now, I guess because it's gotten so tiny because some people have left, etc., and because some of them have always been like a little bit more separated on their own way, and because now we see each other way less, it's like less of a group, and it's more like, I don't know, when it comes around to hanging out together, we can do it and so on, but I would say that it's less. Also, it's because it's so small, the group is like so small now, it doesn't feel like that. And I have like a more detailed video talking about the relationships, how I feel the relationships now versus then, and I will link that of this current group, so I will link that at the end card of the video. So yeah, I guess from that, and from that kind of like group dynamics to more how I feel now about it, I would say that, yeah, as I said in the main reflection, I guess I feel more or less okay. And I guess that's also part of me feeling kind of at peace of how the group is now, how the current group is. That it's that I care a little bit less whether I'm weird inside this group or whether I'm not weird, or how weird are they, and so on. And I care merely about other things, right? You know, about whether it feels kind, whether it feels like a good vibe, and so on. And when it doesn't feel like a good vibe, then I care about that, and I don't like that people are too normal, right? And less accepting of the weird. Versus when people are like being, I don't know, too selfish in a weird sense, or like too weird, but in a selfish sense, in that sense, then I do care about weirdness, and I don't like that people are like such outliers in that sense, right? So yeah, but yeah, I would say that I feel more or less okay with the fact that I am weird and I have weird friends, and I actually like can laugh about it, can laugh about the weird aspects, both from the past and the anecdotes that in the past have been generated, to kind of like make light of the fact that we are weird or whatever. And also, hanging out with weird people now, it feels like more, I don't know, more relaxed. I don't feel like as all the eyes are on me, and I feel more like, or that all the eyes are on them and therefore reflecting on me. I'm more like, okay, if that's what it is what it is. and I'm just going to keep doing my thing. If they want to be weird, I'm not going to like put any stop to that, and they can be weird or whatever. I mean, if they were actually going to be weird in like, I don't know, an actively annoying sense or something like this, maybe I am like, okay, don't actually do that or something like this. But I mean, more weird in like a status way rather than in a bothering people way and that kind of stuff, right? It's like passively bothering someone because you are weird doesn't count. It's more like actively going to somebody and like invading their space or like being too forward to someone who that clearly doesn't want to be, I don't know, approached. Not even in a sexual way or something like this, right? More in a, they're on their own. Let them be, you know. When those things happen, then I do care. But I mean, in a general sense, you know. But I will add that I do still feel hurt sometimes when I feel called out or excluded, especially when it's kind of like explicit. Even though, and when I don't really know if it's because I'm weird or not, you know. If I'm being like, for example, we're imagine you're, well, yesterday I was hanging out at the club or something, and I was like with this friend who is like a little bit weird and with that I've made in like this past a couple of years ago or something like this online, and two other random people we met that night. Then we were talking like outside the club, and someone like called the security guard or something, called us out, and we're like either getting back inside or like leave. Right? It's like, is it because of noise or is it because we're kind of like too weird? I don't know. So that what like if we were cooler, would he have let us be? Would he have done it in a more relaxed way? Would he have done it? Would he have been more polite? You know what I mean? That's kind of like what makes me feel hurt, or and when these things happen or something like this, right? Or if we're hanging out at a restaurant or something, and I don't know. Actually, when we are hanging out at the restaurant and I feel and my friends are being weird ordering, and the waitress or something laughs, I find it funny still, right? That's like one instance, for example, that used to like make me kind of a little bit mad or something, right? When my friend orders like his very niche things that he has to have like that, and he also has like a very loud tone of voice. It feels a little bit embarrassing, but now it's like, I don't know, I'm used to it, and it feels like funny to hear him state his order and to see how the waitresses or whatever react. That's still funny. So yeah, that's basically my reflection, my evolving relationship with having weird friends. It's a pretty long video. It turned out longer than I did because I guess my initial video was going to be just like that reflection, but since I added the timeline, it got to be a lot longer. But yeah, hope you found that part interesting and you and it helped bring the point down, because I feel like a more compact version of this video could have been just like the main reflection and like how I feel now, and then bring like little bits of anecdotes from that, like within that. But I feel like the whole timeline brings more perspective and like more depth to the point, and I feel like it makes it more understandable. So let me know what you think about this. I'm going to leave it at the end card of the video, this video that I mentioned, where I talk about more specifically the relationships as I see them now and how have they evolved. But yeah, thank you for watching, and see you in another video maybe. And yeah, feel free to leave any thoughts you have in the comments below. Bye. 30. So if I don't stop recording the streaming right now, I'm going to not die. Sorry, I thought I was going to die. I'm going to not go to bed in time. I mean, I'm probably going to bed at 11 anyways. But if I continue streaming, I'm going to bed. I'm going to go to bed even later. So yeah. Plus, there's no one watching, so it's like who cares? I guess I wanted to still talk a little bit more and to elaborate another point that I had here. That I thought of in the club, called the case for DJ playlist. I asked the DJ in the club yesterday. She was like a drag queen or something, and I DM'd her on Instagram asking like for the playlist, and she said, "Sorry, I don't have it. You can like wait to see where I'm playing in like my Instagram stories or whatever." And I was like, okay, but I actually think having a playlist just outside of the selfishness part of it, I actually think it could be like a good idea for her to have the playlist. So yeah, I wanted to explore that idea further and try to like develop it a little bit more so that I could kind of like counter DM her with like, okay, I've been thinking about it actually, and sorry if it seems too obsessed or something, but I feel actually that it is not just like a selfish motive of wanting this playlist for some kind of like easy way to listen to the music that you do without having to pay or something. It's more complex than that, and I feel like it makes for your case. Like I feel like there's a case for it. But yeah, I know. But I'm also glad to without wanting it to be some kind of like obligation for you to make this, because I don't have any all the context of like what the, being a DJ entails, etc. It's just more like my reflection on it and why I think it could be in this age something interesting. But yeah, thank you for watching and goodbye. Thank you for watching if you're in the future particularly, and if you're not in the future and you're watching, then I don't know how that it is because it's empty right now. Yeah. Bye.